only 3 people can get the BOGO.
That's too bad. Hi guys. Okay. So we are calling the meeting to order today at 5:35, which is only 5 minutes late. So that's good for us. We'll kind of start off as usual with a territorial acknowledgement. The Board of Directors acknowledges that the University of Waterloo is on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our organization operates on the Haldimand Tract, land promised to 6 nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. And that is the 6 nations, not just 6 nations generally. We'll start off with opening remarks, of which I don't have too many. I just have some kind of key things to bring up. As we might notice, the agenda for this meeting is relatively short. We do have a presentation that's going to take up a bit of time, and a couple of things that might take up some time, but I don't expect it to take up too much. I want to reiterate that just because the agenda is short, does that mean we have to fill up our time by speaking longer on these issues? If you don't think that something would have been relevant before, it doesn't have to be relevant now. So I do want to give that, I am missing part of a meeting for this board meeting. It'd be nice if I could get there and pop my head in and say hello. So let's hope that we can finish early for once. Yeah. So outside of that, I don't believe I have too many opening remarks. I want to say I was very happy about the fact that there was, I think that this, you know, I want to take note of the fact that this board meeting is happening before the elections, and I want to say that I was happy that this was handled responsibly. I have not seen any anything come up that would have seemed to have caused problems in that respect. So I do want to thank everyone for doing that. So before we get into it, I'll just say, is there any dissent on approving the agenda as submitted? Seeing none, the agenda is considered adopted. We are going into conflict of interest declarations. Does anyone want to declare any conflicts of interest? Or know of something that there may be a conflict of interest? Okay, I'm not seeing it. With that being said, we're going to consent. Any dissent to adopting the consent agenda, which just includes the minutes from last meeting? Nope. Okay. The consent agenda is considered adopted. And now we get to move on to the fun, which is our first presentation from Sandra. Sandra, I will hand this to you. It is on Black Swan events, planning and managing. So I'll pass that
All
over.
right. Thank you. I will just share my screen. Give me 1 second. Can everybody see that? I'll flip it in just a second too. All right. To close a few windows that I didn't realize I had open. That one done. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today, I'll just go to the slideshow, is scenario planning or Black Swan events, as it was titled in the agenda, which I think caused a little bit of consternation with that event there, and what were we going to be talking about and what was it all about. Black Swan events are a topic that comes up a lot in for-profit and not-for-profit organizations, and they usually deal with doomsday scenarios. You could argue that the pandemic was a black swan event. Any of the changes in the economic situation within a country or globally, those become kind of black swan events. So I've decided to title it a little bit more positively, because it truly is a way for you to look at things that might happen in the future that you want to be planning or being ready for. So we will talk about the board's role, change events or black swan events, and then the bulk of what I wanted to spend some time on was really just giving you a toolkit for, should you have to do some of these scenario plannings, what kind of things are you going to be doing? And I know through the work that Melissa has done in developing a crisis communication strategy, and you have a communication policy, those are all great pieces, and they do come into the work that you would do with scenario planning. But the scenario planning is a little bit more of the art of the possible, or the art of what might happen. the crisis communication policy that you have deals with something that's truly happened and you need to get messaging out. So a good scenario plan will also have a communication strategy, and you are in great shape with what you've got in place with the policy that you have already designed. So just to remind you and to put it into the context, you use the governance framework as a way of involving your planning. We've spent a lot of time talking about fiduciary responsibilities, strategic responsibilities, and your generative responsibilities. And that really is the governance framework that you are working with. And there are scenario planning applications all the way through. I think you can think in fiduciary, the fiduciary component, what happens if you don't have the budget? What happens if you don't have the fees that you need to do what you need to be doing? What happens if your reports are late for grant requests, those kinds of things. In the strategic piece, and I think a little bit of this was done when you were doing the long range plan, and that was, what do we want the future of WUSA to look like? What are the things we're going to focus on? And I think there was some discussion about, well, what happens if we don't meet these? What are the consequences? What's the impact? What's our strategy if we can't implement it the way that we had planned on doing that? A lot of the scenario planning you really do intuitively. It is something that you think about. You've got a paper that's due, for example, and you think about what's the time that you need to have doing with it. What are the things you need to have in place? What's the research you need to do? All of this falls into scenario planning as well. Now you're doing it in the context of what's in the best interest of WUSA and what are the responsibilities you need to have. Scenario planning with generative, I think you can imagine, is probably the most fun because it truly is the art of the possible. What might you like to see? What's coming next? What might we like to be planning? So the black swan events, you do scenario planning around them, but the black swan events are really uncertainties facing an organization. There are things that we might need to have an urgent response to, and there could be some things that we get to plan for. So the examples that are on the slide are things that you'd have to have a quick urgent response to. Your communication strategy is going to help you quite a bit. The communication policy that you have is going to help you with, if you had social divides, if you had fire, floods, and the pandemic, you're needing an urgent response to it. There are a few things, though, that you may have a little bit more time to plan, and that's where the scenarios start to come into play. The key is that you want to be looking at what's the potential impact and the impact to whom, and what are some mitigating strategies or focuses you might be able to have. So some of the things that might come in your way as you're trying to assess the future is there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. Just even thinking of locally, well, provincially, what's happening with the change in the immigration status, it didn't affect the University of Waterloo or Laurier as much as it affected Conestoga. And if you can see the things that are happening with Conestoga College right now, you can bet that around that board table, they would have had to be starting to think about what's the impact of closing this Stratford campus, which seems to be on the books right now, and they've just had students come in. What are some of the other factors, and what's the longer term impact? So we want to make sure that with scenario planning, you're looking at what might happen. And the key is that you can't just look at one solution. You've got to look at a number of possibilities. So it's almost, and I love this slide because you may have a plan in place, and I'll take your long range plan. You've got a plan in place on where you want to go, but something could happen and it's going to force you to detour. The pandemic was a classic example in recent history that all of a sudden everybody shut down, had to look at what they were going to be doing to keep the businesses afloat. And then, or in this case, in your case, keeping the students going, the university going, keeping the classes going. And you can bet that the long range plans at that time were kind of put on the wayside, but now have come back into play. So it's a detour, but yet you're coming back into your longer plan. So what is scenario planning? It's a way of looking at the future based on the things that you do know and predicting or thinking about some of the unknown inputs. You want to make sure that you are making educated choices on things that need to happen. So this is where the longer term comes into play. where you can be planning and getting more input and doing more research. It's looking at trying to understand what impacts when and what kind of results or things that you want to do. You don't want to be totally surprised or unprepared. So it's learning a little bit of learning from what's happened in the past and saying, okay, could this happen to us? So I'll go back to my example of the change in foreign students and the impact on tuition that's had for one of our post-secondary institutions. Is that something that could happen to Waterloo? What's happening with the Student Association at Conestoga? Is that something that could happen to WUSA? And if so, or if not, how do we plan around it so we're not in that particular scenario? You can also look at scenario planning as a risk mitigation strategy. So for some of the known risks, for example, worldwide, wildfires are known risks. You can plan for those and how to mitigate it. Some of the things that might be unknown and causing risks, pandemic again, in the context of universities, student protests, in the case of the example we've had with McGill most recently, the change in relationship with the university had a dramatic effect on the student membership and also the student association there. And is that something that's going to be repaired in the short term, the long term, and what are the impacts that are involved in there? As student leaders, that's something that you want to be thinking about. The scenario planning is also a way of helping you be more and more prepared. You know that on the operations side, Suzanne and team are always looking at things like what happens if the IT support goes down, what happens if there are issues with turnkey, what happens if your suppliers are not supplying what you need to have there. You have the accountability of looking at the broader things with the supportive staff on where you want to take this organization and what might impact it going further. And it doesn't hurt to take a look at what's happening in your context in the broader world. So what's happening in other university campuses, what's happening in other countries with post-secondary, what's happening globally that may affect what's going with WUSA. It is a consistent approach to what might happen, and it provides some framework for how you're going to do it. And I'll go quickly through a framework. Damien, I know I've got about 20 minutes altogether.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay. Because I did have an exercise I wanted you to do, and I may just leave you with it so that I'm not taking up too much time and just be giving you more of the theory today. The scenario planning is also an opportunity to change the minds and actions of people internally and externally so that you're better preparing for the future. If you're doing this scenario planning, it's allowing you to look at a roadmap. It's allowing you to look at considerations as you're looking at different circumstances that may arise. And it is outside of the day-to-day kinds of things that you're doing. The benefits are you're quicker to react to the changing landscape. So again, going back to things that have happened in the past, learning from those and you may not have it fully baked, but having should we be hit with another pandemic? Should we have a student protest? What are the 2 or 3 things that we know we're going to do each time so that we can be responsive, be nimble, and be ready for that particular situation? And again, I come back to the crisis communication plan, the way it's laid out. You've got lots of elements that are there about the messaging that you're going to get out, but behind that needs to be what's the plan. It also gives you an earlier opportunity to look at some potential risks, and as I said, it's getting you aligned with a much more common vision. So a lot of organizations are really good at doing strategic planning or long-range planning. And my challenge to WUSA is to start thinking of, before you get into the next long-range plan, to play with some scenarios prior to that. And that starts to help develop what the longer range plan may need to be. And it's important, it's a good practice to plan and consider. The foundation, just like the foundation for the strategic plan for scenarios, is in your values. So as you're coming up with alternatives or you're coming up with possible solutions to issues that you're facing, It's grounded in the values for the organization. It's grounded in the values that each of you bring as students to the work that you're doing. And if you don't grind it in or base it in or make that foundation in the core values, it really makes it difficult for you to move forward together. So some of the roles with scenario planning, and you can read this after we'll make sure you get the slides. The board, it doesn't change the role that you currently have. You have the responsibility for oversight and stewardship and any policy changes that may need to happen. You are looking at that 30,000-foot level. You're also, though, asking some of the tough questions when you're working with staff in creating the scenarios. Have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? What happens if this? And just delving more into the activities. It's not carrying them out, but it's asking those questions. The staff have a similar role that they do as they're managing operations. As you're looking at the different scenarios, you would look at research, looking at the framework that might need to be developed, look at the detailed plans that might go with each of the scenarios, and continue to update the plans as more information happens, or the scenarios that happen. In a practical level, and St. Patrick's Day is coming up. One of the scenarios and scenario planning that the Town and Gown Committee and the large street gathering working group that they have is scenario planning for what happens on that day. It's on a Tuesday, so you can bet that there have been plans looking at, okay, when are things going to start to happen? Is it Monday? Is it Saturday? Based on a Tuesday, what happens if it's raining? What happens if it's sunny? All those kinds of things fall into the scenario planning. The things that you have to guard against, or the suggestion to guard against when you're doing scenario planning, is don't think narrowly. Make sure that you are broader in your thinking. It's okay. All ideas maybe seem like they're way and radical and far out there. Those are the ones that start to get you thinking about, okay, what's practical? Again, adding it back into your values, and then you get the scenarios into something that's much more workable. The third bullet is one that really resonates with me all the time with scenario planning. It's not a science, it's an art, because there's so many different unknowns that might happen as you're coming up with the different scenarios. So just moving quickly to the toolkit, some of the things that you will have, and it's fairly straightforward. There are simple steps in scenario planning, looking at defining and being aware of what possible alternatives might be, developing the alternatives to the current scenario, such as what's the scope, what are the potential impacts, what's the responses, or what are the strategies, what are the resources you need or might need, and what are the options to consider, and the variable impacts on timeframes, such as it could be not knowing information. If it's something that you're trying to solve within the university year, it could be the timetables just of your own course schedule, so not having the time to be able to devote to carry it out. And the key thing, identifying what those goals and outcomes for the post-event will be. So often, and some of you will have seen in some of your planning courses, it's a 7-step or 6-step actually process where you're identifying what the scope is, you're carrying out the resources, then your research, and then creating the different scenarios, testing and validating and communicating what the plan might be, applying it, and then evaluating it again at the end. So just to go in a little bit more detail, the kinds of questions in terms of the scope might be, how much do we know? What are the problems we're really trying to respond to or solve? So who should be involved? So who needs to be around the table, and what structure or process do we need to use, and what's the timing to carry it forward? The second phase is the research. What's our current situation? What are the range of factors driving the change and impacting it? So why are we in this mess or this particular situation? And what are the things we need to consider? And how are we going to get more information? You're going to create the scenarios. And so think about what scenarios might have a high impact, a low probability, or a low impact. So it's using the same risk management structure that we've talked about before. Is something going to cause a major disruption? Is it just a quick flash in the pan kind of thing, so you don't need to really worry about it? Is it going to result in incremental change? And you could see, if you had to pick the pandemic, where would you place the pandemic on this chart? Any thoughts? Damien, go ahead.
Probably major disruption.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I'll
I
agree
can't
with
see the
Damien there.
hands up. I'm gonna need some help.
Well, that's something.
I said I'll agree with Damien on that.
I want that noted.
Perfect. Any other thoughts? I would have been there too with the major disruption, but as I played through and kind of reflected on what happened with the pandemic, I would have moved it to the strategic shift, because it really brought a lot of different changes in how we do things, how we think about things, the use of technology, and it was, to me, a strategic shift in how we were dealing with it. But there are two different opinions on where it needs to be. So if you're going through and coming up with the different scenarios, you're going to want to talk those through and decide maybe those are alternatives and what are the impacts of each of the alternatives. So it is really helpful to use the 2x2 matrix. And the one question you want to ask also, because you're looking at some of the factors that are impacting a particular scenario, a really good question to ask always is, how could we be wrong? Is there any way, we've predicted all these things, is there a way, is there a possibility that we could be wrong, and what's the impact on that? And how are we going to adjust? Then the next step in the scenario planning is to validate and communicate. So test what you're thinking you want to be doing. Is it plausible? Is it relevant? Is it going to carry and resolve what you need to do? And I bet you're all thinking, okay, yeah, this is great if we've got lots of time. But what happens if we've only got 24 hours or 48 hours, which sometimes with the crisis pieces, that's the case. I challenge you to go through each one of these steps. You may not have the luxury of weeks to be able to do it, but you do need to think about all of these steps as you're developing a strategy or a solution to a current issue. And then the next is to apply it. So test it out, see how it works, develop different scenarios, and try it again, and continue to look at how it works. And then preserve it. Map any changes that might happen in terms of the environment, map any changes in policy that might have an impact on that particular scenario. So it's more of a discipline to get you thinking about how you're going to look at issues that are facing you now and or maybe facing you in the future, and trying to keep you, again, as an organization, your role is to look at the future and be preserving the future of WUSA. So I've talked about this one, that typically you have 3 or 4 months to prepare. Realistically, we probably only have 1 or 2 weeks in urgent situations, and maybe even less than that. And so that's why you want to be able to be disciplined in the kind of thinking around the scenario planning. So just to give you some examples, just 2 examples, and one is I want to leave you with thinking about it. And this is what I've heard us talk about quite a bit, is wanting to keep fees affordable, so the student fees affordable, while increasing student engagement. So if you had to go through the scenario planning steps as we've just gone through, you're going to identify the drivers. What are the factors that are going to impact this? What's the outcome that you want to have? Are there any impacts on tuition? Is enrollment going to have an impact? What are the social trends? Are people engaging or not engaging? How is that going to affect the future? Map it out on the 2x2 matrix. So what are the top 2 uncertainties to create the quadrants and create that potential future, and then build the narratives around each quadrant. And then how will WUSA succeed in each one of the scenarios that you come up with? So your matrix might look like something like this. So you want to be growing in student engagement, but you've also got funding as a component of it. So the fees. So you might think about or service, if you had a service retraction to help your fee structure, you probably would have less student engagement. If you were in the middle ground, you might have a moderate retraction in the fees, but you may be erring on the side of getting the growth that you want to have. Adding additional service opportunities for students will get more engagement. It also is going to result in a higher fee potentially. And or the other to look out there, the scenario would be, what are some new funding models? Is it always reliant on the students to be paying it, or are there other opportunities, granting opportunities that WUSA as a whole might be able to think about? And I think that takes me to the end. So I will stop sharing and just open it up for any questions, Damien. And again, it's a theoretical approach and a good way to just look at how you're planning and how you're thinking about different circumstances.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, for same thing, kind of look to the room to see if there's any questions or comments or anything like that.
Again, it's just another tool in your toolbox.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I think this is getting the sense of I'm in my own like set of events where this might be helpful, so it's it's always good to have as many options as possible. I see Rory.
I don't know if we'd be able to share the presentation with the board afterwards for them to review on their own time.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'll give it to Esther and she can get it out to you, to Mike.
All right, anyone else? Reda.
Well, firstly, I think it was a pretty, I mean, I only walked in halfway through, but what I got was pretty useful. What I'm thinking is that there is, I think, something unique in hearing about this from you, given your role, in the city. And we kind of heard from that when you brought up, like the city's, I guess, theoretical planning around St. Pat's Day. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, is there anything that maybe we haven't been proactive in planning for, whether independently or collaboratively with the city or the region?
Well, I think, I had the privilege my first term of being on Town and Gown, so I know how important it was for the student governors at that time to be actively involved in the different committees with Town and Gown. And so I would just encourage you to make sure that there is active participation from WUSA at Town and Gown. It's both staff. I think you have the opportunity to have both staff and a student director there. The voice of the students in the practicalities of the things that Town and Gown looks at is really, really, really important. Having 3 institutions within the city of Waterloo, students are a high proportion of our population, so your voices matter. Your voices matter a lot. So I don't know, have I answered your question, Rada?
I think so, yeah. Thanks.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sandra. Is there anything else that you want to say before we kind of move on to the next item?
No, thank you for the opportunity to give you one more tool. If
If
it helps you now, that's great. If it helps you as you continue on your career journeys, then I've accomplished what I need to accomplish with you.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I guess with that, we are about on time. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is actually from unfinished business, which we don't have often. But that is 4.1, approval of bylaw amendments. So that is from Samir. So I'll hand that to you. This is going to be a motion, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't have the motion in front of me. I guess approval of bylaw amendments we can work with. I would be looking for a seconder for this motion. I saw Rory first.
There's a couple parts of it that come from our in-house legal counsel. I think that I want to discuss in confidential, that's okay. And part of it I'll discuss in public for different aspects of it. I'll motion to move in confidential.
Perfect. If you want to do that at the start with the confidential? Okay, perfect. So I'll be looking for a seconder for confidential. I saw him on first. Any dissent to going into confidential?
Being sure this is
I see. Well, maybe wait until in confidential. I see.
It's fully public.
Okay, cool. I see nothing, so we will move into confidential. Michael, oh, Mike, sorry, Mike, can you move us in?
My formal today.
I know. Perfect. All right. Just for the people who happen to watch this meeting, we did amend to remove the section of the motion that touched 9.10, which covers how like removal of an officer who is still an employee. So that vote happened. Yeah. With that being said, we'll move on to the rest of the motion. Pass it back to Samir.
This is a tiny clerical change. We don't need this line saying following the bylaws.
I'm with it.
Person saying faculty, not faculties. Election results by the members shall not be withheld. Here comes the bigger section. So this is up to us, but Pat recommended us to at least look at it. So right now, the process that no one runs is number one, we try to get a director to become a full-time officer. Nope. If they say no, then we call a by-election. During the by-election, we may appoint an interim officer. If a newly elected director wants to be interim, we try it. If not, board can appoint, right now there's an individual who serves as an interim officer. The change would be a member for an interim officer. If no one's elected in the by-election, we can still appoint an individual for the full time. The question is, for the interim individual, do we want it to be a member or an individual? This came from Pat.
I'll hand it to Rory first. I think I'm going to say the same thing.
Okay, I guess starting with the first option, my question is this going to be the outgoing board appointing the incoming president? Because it needs to be approved at the annual members meeting. Or are we just going to call another?
The new board. This would probably happen in the main meeting.
So then you're going to call another annual members meeting to appoint the president?
No, because
You need to? You need to, you don't need to. Oh.
That's, you don't, no, but that's what it says.
Where?
Number one, a president or vice president by 2/3 majority vote of the board to be ratified at an annual members meeting.
the incoming board is what you should say. It isn't an actual, from my understanding, for this section, also this is the last meeting. You were
I know, I'm reading that.
like what happened during next year, the incoming board will have a vote. It isn't technically a legal board vote because they aren't legally directors yet. But the incoming board would appoint a president or vice president.
Probably specify that as the incoming board then.
Because the reason we have it this way is legally they're already a voting member of board. We don't need to go back to A&M. They will be like, since they're already going to be a director, this can happen in the main meeting too.
Like Sandra has their hand.
Yeah, Sandra. 5 minutes.
I can offer some clarification. Sorry. The provisions in ANCA allow a board to fill a vacant position. And the other corollary with it is it has to be ratified at the next annual members meeting. So if there isn't anybody that runs and the board puts somebody into that position, they act into that position because the board has the authority to do that. And then that's ratified at the next meeting. You don't have to call, there is only one annual members meeting and you don't need to call a special meeting to do that.
A year, then I'm ratified.
Correct. Correct.
Yes.
From talking to Pat, Sandra, my understanding is that unlike most organizations, our officers are also voting members of the board. And
Correct.
because of that, they must be appointed at a members meeting. And that's the problem there. And from my understanding in previous things, they do have to go to a members meeting to be appointed. Because like in practice, you're also a director. We're appointing them to the director voting seat. That's why we need the annual meeting. To be an officer, you're right. They don't need to go to a members meeting.
Correct.
So they would be non-voting until they're ratified.
That's why we want a newly elected director to become an officer. That way we don't have to touch it. That's why option one is get a newly elected director to be in.
Yes.
Okay, we had this last time. This is just about member individual.
Oh, God, sorry.
Yeah, Rory.
And
Go ahead, Sandra.
I was just gonna say, this is a good change, the member to from the individual to the member, because the individual could be me. And I'm not a member of WUSA. The more important is that you're having a member of WUSA.
I'm going to speak now. Didn't last time something like this happened, we appointed someone who was not a member.
That was an interim.
Yes, was this is not about it's to serve as interim officer. It says it right there.
Interim until the by-election's over. Interim means until the by-election's over.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
No, last time,
Last time it was for a full year.
the non-interim.
I know. What I'm saying is, you know what? I'm dictating to me to go ahead.
So what you're saying is right, actually. They did a point, that outside member, either way, that was a dumb idea. It shouldn't be an outside member, no matter what. The officers should be members of the organization. So this is great wording that Pat wrote for us.
That means to do what you wanted to do.
Okay, that's not fun.
Lauren, can I get back to the thing I wanted to run?
I think that's out of scope. The scope is about this change here. I think that's out of scope, actually, Mr. Chair. If passed these changes, the scope is a member individual.
He is right, but an amendment is always possible. So.
So Arya, this is talking, maybe.
Wow, you're sharing. Go ahead.
Sorry, trying to be nice. This is for an interim officer until a by-election's over. If no one runs in the by-election, the board may still appoint a qualified individual, like Denver was.
Oh, let's change that to member too.
We couldn't find a member who's willing to do it.
That's shame on us.
This is talking about the interim. This is between when the year starts and the by-election.
Go ahead.
I think Suzanne made a comment that I don't know if people heard.
I did not.
The year of Denver.
Well, we didn't try to find, it was an 8 months time, it was just stepping into this. It was somebody that our president staff knew well and knew was looking for whatever, so off we went, and it was something that helped staff at the time to have someone to support and be there. I will tell you from the university and the institutions level, they didn't like it because they wanted a member to be at the table, to be at committees, to be able to have votes, et cetera, and they weren't comfortable with it. I'll just note that.
I'm going to speak. I was going to say, I'm actually looking in the opposite direction in the sense of like, I prefer a member, but it feels weird to bind ourselves when we need an officer that like, sometimes, I mean, no member ran, right? I think we need to remember that is that the election was open, like it's possible the election was open, nobody was running and still no one put their name in. So it can be very hard to do this. And so it feels like maybe a best practice and not a bylaw.
That's what I was gonna say.
It's your motion.
It's from Pat.
I was gonna say something similar, and I'm wondering if to reflect the fact that it is best practice, people would want it to instead say an individual with preference for a member. Which, I mean, it's not really a policy red line, but I think it leaves things open for us should be needed. And we can do that for both sections 2 and 3, like for both the interim and for me.
Okay, so if there's, I mean, depends on the appetite of the board. I still think like, if the role isn't done by a student who is of Waterloo, like then it really defeats the point of having the role, right? You could argue that let's just put a random, full-time staff to do this position. So I don't know. I think we didn't try. I think if we try, we can. That's possible. I think a lot of those failures of water turnout also have other reasons. So I don't know. That's my opinion. But of course, it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to die on the hill. But I think member would definitely be better because it's the spirit of what the role is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, okay. I would also say that there are people who are part of our community and experienced and potentially good for an interim position that would not be members. So for example, I'm thinking, imagine a year from now, we need someone to step up as interim for like 2 weeks.
don't shoot. Don't use me as an example.
There is someone who was previously an officer, but is no longer a member. I would be happy to have them serve as the interim. And I think it would be better to select that person than a random member, even though that person is no longer by that point the member. Right? And so I think what I'm saying is we can have the preference that it be a member, but I think we should leave it open because there are situations that I can foresee where the best individual or potentially the only individuals that we have are non-members.
If there's a response, I'm only gonna allow one more for not saying anything. Okay.
I motion to amend the motion to the board may appoint an individual with preference for a member to serve as interim officer. This will stay as individual. And the same thing down here, we appoint a qualified individual with preference for a member to fill the responsibilities.
Seconded by Rita Esther. Did you get that? Perfect. With that being said, the amendment's in. Any debate on the amendment? I would recommend not. Like it is. Okay. Nope, not saying anything. Okay. With no debate, I'll do it through consent. Any dissent on adopting the amendment?
Postpone me as.
Oh, okay, so we will go to a vote. All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 in favor. All those abstaining? 1. All those against?
I see where you're coming from. That's very reasonable.
Oh, so, didn't see Shadow.
David, sorry, one sec. I'm going to chime in with a point here. I thought you were going to do 4 against abstain. So when I raised, it was under the impression it was going to be against. So my vote should please be recorded as against.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mohammed. Perfect. And move on. All right, section. We're good to go. I mean, Mohammed had his hand up.
Okay.
I don't know if there was a 1 you said, so I don't know if it's a different.
No, it was to the point, but we ran out of time. Came a bit too
Okay.
late.
Thank you.
I wonder if the section will take 5 minutes, Damien.
Shut up. Move on.
Okay, so we go this whole section first for any questions, please. So this is room from the president. The president shall supervise and control but operate. We have a conflict. I declare a conflict with this section, with this motion. Wait, I'm moving it.
Okay, move your motion.
Okay.
The president supervises and controls the operations of the corporation. There's no executive director in office. Instead, is now set under the executive director, where the position of executive director is vacant. The board shall appoint an interim executive director from the corporate executive leadership team.
Hold up. I'm trying to figure out what the conflict is here.
Because I'm taking away my own power if I get elected.
President shall supervise there's no executive director in office. Okay, thank you. I was just trying to figure out like
Yeah.
the scale of the conflict here.
I don't think it's fast.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna ask you what. Okay.
Should I remove the president makes 20 million a year line from bylaws as well?
Whatever, buddy. All right.
The other thing, so this is coming in the February meeting. According to past legal advice, what the best practice is to do, is best practice on legal advice, is if the executive director position is vacant and a successor is not appointed, i.e. an emergency happened and all of a sudden we lose executive director. The best practice would be, and I'm bringing this policy next time, to have an executive committee instantly get created of the officers. The executive committee would then recommend to board 2 things. The interim, who do you think the interim executive director should be? And 2, a process of finding the full-time executive director. That executive committee of the 3 officers will be in charge of the corporation's operations until the interim's appointed. Ideally, the executive committee will just for less than a week. I have sample terms of reference text written, but it is not done yet. I can show it if people wish.
Yeah. Okay, we'll speak first. It'd be nice to see Mohammed. First of all, I want to say I really appreciate you bringing what you have completed and not bringing what you haven't completed. And I can understand that conversation. I am not very comfortable removing it when there's not currently a way to handle it. Because there is not currently an executive committee or anything like that that is part of this bylaw. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So by removing this, in the meantime, we will not have anything.
Policy, yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's.
Then, if board's okay with it, I'll chair, can I get quick feedback before I bring it next time? Of what people think?
Okay, well, I'll give it like. 1 minute. That's fine. I'll do that. Mohammed, go ahead.
Thanks, David. Samir, just a quick point here. If I understand it correctly, obviously bylaws supersede policy manual. Wouldn't there be a slight contradiction if the listing here at the bottom says the board shall appoint an interim executive director from among the corporation executive leadership team, and then let's say the executive committee meets and decides that the interim executive director is not amongst the executive leadership team? Wouldn't that be a little bit of a difference?
I'm gonna pass it to Samir.
So they would choose among the executive team. There is a real world situation, which I hope never happens, where the entire executive team resigns, for example. Then they would have to have more leeway where to choose from. But yes, they will basically be choosing from among the executive leadership team, from my understanding. I know Esther's hand up as well, so let me know.
Oh, I appreciate it. I can't see Esther. I'm gonna pass it to Esther then.
For that point, that executive committee would, whatever decision they make will be going back to board. It's a recommendation. It's not binding. It's more or less a recommendation which the board would approve. So it's not like it, I don't see it as contradicting.
Well, that's exciting.
I'm just gonna say, like to Esther's point there, I don't love the executive, I'll just give some feedback committee, because it doesn't really matter. It's gonna come to board, the board's gonna debate it all over again, and they're gonna pass it. So why not just bring, and I think it's one of the few roles that board actually needs to be involved in. It's the executive director of the company.
It's the interim.
Or interim, whatever, it's the person who can run the place, the whole board should be involved in this. So that's where I said on that governance question. But that's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna take Rory's and Mohammed's, and then you can answer them. And then we're done. Okay?
I disagree, given that it's the interim role, you want to fill that position as soon as possible to ensure ongoing operations. And so I do think that, again, this is going to come to board anyway, and so I'm fine with the way that it's currently put together. But
David, I have a one. Oh, sorry, Rory.
Okay, hold up.
Yeah, I think already another part of the executive committee is controlling operations in the interim before you get an interim executive director. That's part of it. So the president being solely responsible for operations in the meantime. And I think part of those responsibilities is bringing forward a search process proposal for board of directors. I think those 2 days would be chaos if we don't have a replacement, and having a small group of proposals like, okay, we're gonna do a 1 month search with this kind of thing. Bringing that forward again. Board can change it, but yeah, doing operations is probably the more important part of the executive committee. Another part, and I'll say this quickly to know, Sandra, we've talked about the downsides. It immediately is only created when there is, a vacancy, and immediately dissolves afterwards, unless the board wants it to exist longer. So it isn't like a standing novel that they've completely talked about in the past.
Okay.
Very quickly.
How quickly?
Like 5. I'm just gonna say, we'll talk about this outside more. Shouldn't just a senior director immediately take over?
Which one?
Okay, we can fix, we'll talk about it outside more, but that's my mentality. It can be designated.
Mohammed?
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit why I said there might be a contradiction. Maybe it's the way I was approaching it differently. And it's also something I perhaps want some clarification on. So obviously, if you look at potential circumstances in which the ED is no longer in their respective position, is you can think about resignation, and then you can also talk about another unfortunate, albeit rare, but certainly possible scenario where the ED is removed from their position by virtue of board. And in that circumstance, again, maybe we're going down mountains of molehills, but in like that circumstance, perhaps the board doesn't want to choose, or the executive committee doesn't want to choose someone within WUSA's established leadership team, or wants to, go down to like an established person like the president per se. I just feel it's like that the concept of, do we want to can ourselves in and not foresee a potential really alternate situation where we might not want the interim executive director to be someone that directly reported to the the interim ED to be someone who reported to the ED in its previous context. And so this is not something I guess I feel I'm going to die on a hill on, but I would like to hear advice from Sandra and Esther on how other organizations do this, because I would feel that that's something that can potentially happen, and it would make sense for the board to be given the opportunity to explore another candidate like the president if it wishes in that circumstance.
Do you want me to jump in, Damien?
If we can keep
Or
it
Esther?
brief.
And the only other thing I would have said is the reason why the two positions are there because of succession planning. So ideally, they're the ones that are best suited to like take over from the ED because they're the ones involved in operations. And I guess that's why Pat recommended that. But from a practice perspective, I feel Sandra will have more ideas because I get your concern about maybe if there are the concerns they have about the president, the EDs, the same similar concerns they have about the senior directors and all of that. So let's Pat and Sandra address those.
Yeah,
how
from
those
a
things get managed in practice.
From a best practices standpoint, Mohammed, to specifically answer your question, most organizations, if there is a resignation or something happens and they don't have the ability of the executive director or CEO, will form a smaller group of the board to look at the interim appointment, and they make an interim appointment and then also make recommendations regarding the longer term search process. It's not usually formalized in bylaw. It's usually a policy of how they do it. But the more important factor of best practice now is that there's an expectation that the succession plan, both short-term and long-term, is part of the regular review that the board does with the executive director. So could be every performance review standpoint when you're doing it with the EDs bringing forward the short-term succession plan, identifying who could step into their shoes should the board need. And sometimes, and I've been in situations where the recommendation for interim has not been one of the senior leaders because they're not ready. It's been to bring somebody in from outside, even on an interim standpoint, but that's part of the succession plan discussion.
Mohammed, I'm not handing it back to you. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going to pass it to Samir for a brief comment, and then you guys can talk about this outside.
Yeah, I think it's very helpful. I'll probably bring two different wording options then. But next time I'll work with Esther and Pat to make sure we get that wording. I think that's a fair point. I appreciate the thing. Please message me. I can send this to you guys afterwards. I really appreciate the feedback. Yeah, I didn't bring this forward recently, but I think I'll take it.
Damien, I want to raise a pinky. I'm really sorry. It's just clarification.
Yeah, go ahead.
So are we going to be passing this right now then, or no? Because no, okay, then we can discuss this at a later time. I'm perfectly happy with that. Just wanted to know.
I motion to table the whole motion. Yeah, I motion to table the whole motion to the next board meeting.
I'll second. Only someone had thought of this earlier, huh?
I want to pause this in 5 minutes.
I'm not gonna throw anyone under the bus. I will just say I was sick when this was made, okay? Okay, I'm looking at second. Is that you? No, Suzanne's public report? Well, you always block the people behind you, you know? Okay.
So I know that the nominations update is almost a week old now. In the past, like last night I was curious. I went to see how many people had reached the nomination thresholds, and I couldn't see the candidates page anymore. I wasn't sure if that was for me or just a general thing, but
I don't know.
It's probably a question for Mike. You're submitting.
Okay, I'm here.
Like,
Is it that you
did you
couldn't
want me
see
to repeat that?
the candidate page?
So it's like in past elections, it's like, say I navigate to like director or president, and at the top there's a button where I press candidates, and I can see like which of the people collecting nominations have become candidates and reached the threshold.
Mm-hmm. That I think that still exists.
I
saw
did
it
that
working
like an
today.
hour ago.
Okay.
I did it 5 minutes ago.
Okay. It might just be a me thing. Maybe Suzanne is out to get.
If you, I will also say, I think there was 1 minute this afternoon where I had like a hiccup when I was navigating online. So if you did it in that very specific time, it might have had an impact.
Oh no, I can see it now. That's weird.
Very good question, Bill. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, seeing none, am I next or is Rum next? I'm next.
One?
What's that?
You have one?
Do I have a written one? No. I will say, even on my unwritten one in my head, it's nothing public. So, I'm good. I'll hand it to our friend who always carries the public reports.
Mine is also pretty short. For people watching and also all of you guys, and tell all of your friends, sign the petition to stop the cuts to Canada student grants. And if you know anyone who's actually using the grants, they can share their story with us. And also we are now starting to actually focus on the WUSA Teaching Awards. So if you have any really cool profs, you should nominate them.
Julio, questions on that? No. I recommend doing it, guys.
You signed it?
No, but I actually will. So, okay.
Oh, also, currently Alberta has more signatures on the petition than us, and Alberta has a smaller population than us, and we gotta beat them.
Yeah, that's gonna be a problem. We can't let that happen. Okay, seeing no questions. We are at the end of our public session here before we move into confidential session. So I guess I will take a motion to move into confidential. Arya, seconded by Mohammed.
Wait,
Sorry.
Sorry, Damon, point of privilege. Did we do public director reports?
No, we did not. And as I was made aware earlier, there is a public director report, which I had explicitly said I would allow for as well. So does anyone have any director reports? Yeah, oh, Mohammed, go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, I had no idea I had to, director reports were on permission, David. Dictatorial. Yeah, thank you, Damon. Okay, just general update. We had our governance consultation with our governance consultants for the governance reform committee for the governance reform initiative. And the only point now here is we're in a very stringent time position. The deadline for the motions is obviously the February board meeting, and we still have a little bit to do in the context of the second initiative, which is the advocacy body. There's not sufficient time for us to bring it to board and then for board to make adjustments. So I'm going to really strongly urge any interested directors to attend the next two governance reform committee meetings. Please RSVP if you're going to attend. I'll send regular updates and emails. I believe you've all been invited as of right now to the upcoming two meetings. If you are interested and you have concerns or questions, attend and raise them then and there, because in best circumstances, we can get it sorted then, and then hopefully have a really small conversation on the board level, because time is not on our side at the moment.
What he said.
That's it.
Well, yeah, if you think that you have opinions, maybe be there. Perfect. As a reminder on the directors, it's, if you think it's relevant to the board, I'll hand that to Rory.
Yeah, sure thing. I'm not sure if you guys have had a chance to look at the hour tracking for the last month. If you do, you'll note that Samir has 14 hours, and then per the tracking that was accessible on the drive, everyone else has 0 hours. I'm assuming that's an error potentially with the merging all the files together potentially. That's something that I wanted to potentially raise if like people were going through that and, you know, wondering why the board was not doing anything. Like they took like a month of vacation or something. But I guess it should be noted that there was I don't know, some sort of error in putting that data together.
Well, I also noticed you guys are slanking.
Who didn't make
a report?
I can confirm that not everything got put together into the spreadsheet on time, so I will make sure that that is merged together, and I will this is the first time we are also making the chart, which is public, based on the board policy manual changes. So once everyone's hours are inputted, we will make that public chart with the categorized hours for type of work that everybody sort of fills in on the left side of the chart for categories. So I'll let you know when that's all updated and you can look at it. I'm sorry it was not ready for this meeting.
Thank you, Mike. I'll just say, if something like this happens, can you put it in the, like that notice that like, hey, these numbers aren't accurate yet, but I appreciate that. Mohammed?
Sorry, just tiny follow-up to Mike. What's going to be uploaded, is it going to be for the last 8 months, or is it just going to be month on month? And second, is it going to be up in the next week or two, or are we looking at longer?
Could be up as soon as tomorrow. I was only planning on doing the last bit since we passed that policy change, but if board would like everything, then I'm happy to do that as well. I see some fingers in the room.
Maybe we should have that conversation. Unless board really feels like we should have a substantive conversation like that here. Should have a conversation, interpretation maybe outside. All right, Rory.
I think make it public. Yeah, all the emails.
I'm going to be honest. I'm very cognizant of the fact there once again is an election coming up, and first I'm hearing about it. I don't want that to play into it. If we are going to make them public in the past, my recommendation might be we do that after the election. I just don't want that to cloud any of the decisions that are made here. But maybe this should be a conversation we have later and possibly even outside. So,
could I have one tiny last point, Damon?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do appreciate it. And this is maybe a question to Samir, and do correct me, Samir. I thought I talked about this, and I brought this up at the last board meeting. It's in the minutes? Okay, so yeah, okay, so it was, or it'll be in the recording worst case, because I recall bringing it up. So that's why I just wanted to bring it up, because I think it was mentioned and it was affirmed, unless in my lapse of connection it wasn't. Thank you.
And it's Samir, if there's a clarification.
I will note during last meeting, he reminded me, he did ask me this, and the intention of board was to publicize it. And I think it was to publicize it then. I understand not an election, but it was supposed to be publicized.
To be clear, if that was a conversation that happened at board, then that changes the dynamic. I'll just ask Mike. I'll just ask if we can review the previous, and if that discussion was happening and there's that understanding, then that changes it. But otherwise,
that was the reason why I thought the back and forth was happening was about the extent, like going back to the beginning of the term.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really clarified at that meeting whether it would be from the beginning of the term or whether it was going to be just this at the point when the policy manual was approved, implying that the last one that was just done. So I think that's the area that we need to play. That's what needs to decide on. But there was actually a conversation on whether they should going forward.
okay.
post that and Samir confirm during the meeting.
Okay, if people can be okay with this, I think we maybe should review the last kind of. We should maybe review the last ones, just to make sure that we didn't have a clarification on if we talked about going back or just ongoing. My interpretation right now is that I remember it being ongoing, but maybe I'm wrong. And if we hadn't clarified that, we can have that conversation after the election, because I think it could be relevant to the election. I don't like making these choices then during, before an election. Perfect. All right. Cool. Okay, cool. I'm not seeing any more reports. So now we'll take a motion to go into confidential. Samir, as always, I'm gonna give it to Katie. Sorry, and any dissent on going into confidential? Okay, seeing none. Mike, can you bring us in?
What is Lisa's motion?
Okay, just quick summary of confidential, not too much to report here beyond, there was a vote to, that passed to, hold an RFP on board advisors. This isn't a position on changing, this is just, once again, doing an RFP to look at the options again. Okay, with that being said, no announcements expected. No one's, you, Mohammed, just as a reminder, it is election period. I'm going to make out hopes that this had nothing to do with that, but go ahead.
Oh, no, I was trying to time the adjournment because I haven't got to move anything the entire meeting.
You don't get to move on adjournment, buddy. That's me. With that being said, sorry, I'm taking this away from you.
Asshole.
I know, I'm a bad person. The meeting is adjourned, right when I expected it to be at 9:01 p.m.
There's no such thing as a short board meeting.